Now, let me go to Kenny Deery, Chief Executive of the Galway Chamber of Commerce, indeed, because we're looking at the Port of Galway and the proposed port extension. Now, it came out of Bord Planola yesterday, and it's quite technical, and even reading the report on it is extremely technical. But the bottom line is, are we going to get an extension to Galway Harbour that will allow the big cruise ships and otherwise to come in, which Eamon Bradshaw, Conor O'Dowd currently, and Tom O'Neill previously have been fighting for with Brian Sheridan down through the years. And Kenny joins me on line one today. Kenny, good morning to you.
Good morning, Keith. How are you?
Now, I'm good. The determination from On Bord Planola is extremely technical, so can I just get to the juicy bits? Are we going to get this extension to the port to allow such ships to come in?
Yes, this is a significant step in the right direction, and something, Keith, that we absolutely welcome. And I think, you're right, it's technical in nature, but I think what shouldn't be lost is there's years worth of submissions and assessment that has taken place to get to this statement from On Bord Planola. And I think the key words in it that I look to and take great and comfort from is, it's the consent for imperative reasons of overriding public interest. And I think when this dialogue started, Keith, going back some years ago, the talk was to cruise ships and other such things, but a lot has changed in the world and in the environment now. And I see this decision as being and recommendation as being a game changer for the city from a number of points of view. We obviously know that the port, it's a busy port as it is. It's involved in supply chain, marine research, servicing the islands, supporting the Navy with their offshore strategic activities. But with this new extension, they'll be able to do all of that and more on a 24-hour basis. But I see this as being a game changer, Keith, for part of the urban regeneration of that part of the city. We talk to the green agenda and smart cities, and this is a significant step in the right direction for Galway, because if you look to cities around the world, you look to Barcelona or Boston, where the city and the port are hugging each other, they're intertwined, and we see what they have managed to create from a cultural tourism perspective, from an amenity perspective, from an urban living perspective. And I think that the significance of this is very much going to feed into what we'll see as a lot of positive developments in that part of the city, making Galway even more attractive a place to land investments, to bring the likes of the diligence, the globalization partners, and build more and more clusters for those global companies who want to locate in a place like Galway. I think there's some practical bits as well, Keith. We talk about Galway, and flooding is an issue, particularly if we've the cross wires of high tide and wind, etc. The reconfiguration of the port will enable a lot more work to be done on flood defences. So there's actually very practical impacts for the city as well. And I think we see the announcement last week with our colleagues down the coast and ESB in terms of offshore wind capability. That's a significant opportunity, not just for Galway, but for Ireland and indeed Western Europe.
Sorry, just let's get so effectively what you're saying here, that this comes in under IROPI, which is that important infrastructure that's needed indeed. So what is the next hurdle to be gotten over here to take this to the next level? Because as long as I'm here, we're talking about an extension, which is a long time, to the port. I mentioned Tom O'Neill, Eamon Bradshaw, now Conor O'Dowd. So, these people have been lobbying for this and all of that. So next step then, in your opinion, Kenny, on this? Next
step, On Bord Planola have made recommendations to the Minister and to government in terms of their position on the port development. So that's the next stage sits very firmly now at the Cabinet table in terms of adopting these recommendations. And then on a wider sense, developing and working on the port at the way they're proposing sees engagement with stakeholders, not just in Ireland, but indeed in Brussels as well, in terms of how we can do this in a way that's in keeping with the standards and expectations at a European level. And one of the items, for example, is the status of the port being upgraded to what's called 10T status, which is something that sounds like gobbledygook to you and I, but it's really important from a point of view at a European level in terms of attracting funding and also being recognised for the strategic importance that it will have for the west of Ireland.
And are we talking?
The next step is at government level.
So are we talking about Minister Charlie McConalogue from a marine and agriculture point of view, or the Minister for the Environment?
It's actually the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage it sits with. And so I know recommendations have been made to the Minister, and that's Darragh O'Brien, so it's at his desk at the moment. And from once it transfers through there, then we're a significant further step in the right direction. And it's looking at also working with, for example, Galway City Council in terms of the inner dock and what happens around that. But in order to be able to do the developments that are proposed at the inner dock, this port extension needed to be a green light in tandem with it. So I think this is significant news. It's a big part of the puzzle now in place that heretofore was being talked about, but we couldn't rely upon. Now the recommendation from on board Planola, as you know, the ABP process, and we know from long history in Galway, it's quite an arduous process, but we certainly welcome the decision and the findings of on board Planola.
But so effectively then on board Planola have said yes. If I'm reading this right in English, on board Planola have said yes to the application under IROPI, and now they've chucked it back to Minister Darragh O'Brien for him to sign off on it. Now, so the whole situation here then, Kenny, is going to be to make sure that those that dominate cabinet and otherwise don't decide that we're going to not approve this or not give Darragh O'Brien the permission to approve it from a ministerial point of view, and we give everything on the East Coast in Limerick. So I think there needs to be a bit of political lobbying done here.
There does, and I think the one basin I was talking to the opportunity in the Atlantic, this is about more than anything that could be delivered in Limerick. I think to put it in context, Dr. Eddie O'Connor, who's somewhat an expert in the renewable energy space, talks about to the economy. This is more than any one port can handle. What the government recognised and what has been very strong in the lobbying of the port, chamber and indeed all interested parties along the West Coast is if we're to seize and capture the opportunity in a proactive way, then we need not just one port, we need enabling ports up and down the West Coast to be able to service the offshore opportunity in a smart, in a digital and in a green way. And I think government recognise that if it's the case they don't put in the investments that are needed now into the likes of the ports of Galway and other locations, they'll have a missed opportunity, because when the technology is fully developed for offshore wind, what you'll find is our colleagues in Norway and our colleagues in mainland Europe will be coming in and servicing from their ports. So at a government level, the strategic importance is that we need to position ourselves and invest now to be able to leverage and enable the opportunities for renewable wind, which will not just service the Irish requirements, but will actually be feeding back into Europe. So this is a game changer, and I think more and more of these announcements you're going to see a lot more, and particularly with the government makeup we have at the moment, the Green Party are very much supportive of what they see as being the significant opportunity in renewable energy and sustainability, and Ireland being at the centre of that by virtue of our location. No other country is better located. Okay, now you mentioned the inner port. That's our current port. So are you saying that, first off, the port company has been taken over by Galway City Council eventually? I do believe that's on the cards for a long time as well. So are you saying the inner port then will become perhaps be filled in and become a residential area? Not necessarily residential, and I think that would miss an opportunity. What it's going to become is this cultural tourism hub to the city.
Will it continue as a port, do you reckon?
Well, you see, the extension to the port will actually see I suppose there's a number of steps to this, and the extension to the port will see a lot of the heavier commercial activities transition out to where this extension that has got recommendations for will move there. And what that will do is create the capacity for that inner port space that people will be so familiar as they drive around by the Harbour Hotel and come down Dock Street. That's going to be transitioned into what you would see, as I say, in your kind of Barcelona type areas where you've got lovely kind of tourism, cultural interface, you've got public realm amenities, you've got some aspects of water support. And I know that they have very ambitious plans for what that will look like, because if we talk to a Galway of the future, the port by its very nature, no matter what map you look at, the port is instilled in the heart of the city. So I don't, filling it in just for residential would be a missed opportunity. It's without a doubt, it will be part of the urban centre of Galway going forward, and there will be residential there. But also people need more than just residential. They need that wonderful outdoor space to walk through, to enjoy our seaside amenities in the way that many cities around the world have shone the light and developed ahead of us.
And Kenny, timeline, what do you reckon, 10, 15 years?
Realistically, to see significant progress on this is not a small project. This is quite a
massive project. So one of the biggest projects that Galway will have gone through.
Absolutely. So you're talking realistically about a 10-year timeline before you would see, I suppose, meaningful, visible development. And some would say to deliver on the wider ambitions that the port have, you're talking about a 30 to 40 year cycle. It's the plans and ambitions that are there are significant, and I think our generations to come will see a Galway of the future that is a fabulous place to live, and that's because of the work and the submissions and the reporting and the work that Conor and the board of the port and the local authority have been going through to try and drive that change. From a business point of view, as I say, attracting FDI, etc., to be able to talk to this story, and the fact that we now have you could talk about we're going through a planning process, but the recommendations certainly from on board Planola very much give a firmer footing to even the IDA when they're talking globally about attracting companies to Galway.
Into the future.
It's a better story, and it's a more firmer footing to be talking to, and it's certainly really exciting for what a Galway of the future will look like.
Well done. Thank you so much for joining us. Kenny Deery joining us, Chief Executive of Galway Chamber, there giving us a shortened version but a more understandable version than the ruling by on board Planola. Thank you indeed for that.